Good morning. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, a Sunday show for Indiana without the bad faith BS. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am your host, and I am broadcasting live from Bloomington. Before we begin, and I bring in our panel here today, I did just want to take a moment to talk about what we're up to here. And I sort of want to use the in this house sign as a metaphor for what we're doing here. And look, I know it's trite and has been an object of derision from both the right and the left, but at its core, I think it mentions something. It brings us all on the same page that we at least need to all agree about certain things before we can come together and have a conversation. So, on this show, we believe Black Lives Matter. Not more than others, not that other lives don't matter, just that Black lives do. We believe that women should have opportunities as full equal human beings to go out in the world and have jobs and make money and choose their reproductive futures. We believe that science is real, that climate change is real, and it's happening now. We believe that this is a country with freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and conservative Christianity is not in any way ensconced into law. And finally, we believe that love is love, and people should have a right to love the partner of their choice, as long as everybody is a consenting adult. Okay? So I'm glad we got out of the way. I want to have more conservative voices on this show. They are a very important part of this conversation. But if you can't sign on to those simple things, if you can't cross that very low bar, sorry, you're not welcome here. Now, who is welcome here, and I'd like to introduce our panel here today. First, joining us from up in Elkhart, the lovely and talented Corinne Strait.
Good morning, Scott. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited. This is the premiere. I feel like I should have walked up to my computer on a red carpet. This is exciting.
So glad to have you here. Also coming to us, there's lovely and talented Kurt Mullet. Oh, we can't hear Kurt. We're going to come back to Kurt, let him get his mic figured out while we welcome Michelle Higgs from right up the road here.
Hey.
How you
good
doing?
To be here with you guys.
And finally, the co-founder of Project Next Media and candidate for Indiana's 9th Congressional District, Dr. Tim Peck. Dr. Peck, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Scott, for doing this. This is huge. We need a Sunday morning talk show. I like the way you started it and defining those terms for in this house to say, let's accept everybody and anybody who can listen to anybody and hear them out, disagree civilly, is welcome on the show.
Thanks so much.
It was a great intro, Scott. Really kind of laying the groundwork here. I like it.
Appreciate it, Corinne. So, Kurt should be back soon, and when he's back, we'll bring him right in. But I do want to go ahead and get started, and we're going to start off with some national news today before we move into local and state coverage here in Indiana. Finally, we'll spend the last several minutes talking about one big thing, and our one big thing today, since this is our debut episode, is to just sort of define these words. What do we mean when we talk about liberal and conservative and progressive, and what do these words mean definitionally, and what do they mean to us? So that'll be about the last 15-20 minutes of the show. But right now, I want to say the biggest, most important story of the week is that Trump's senior advisor, Stephen Miller, says the administration is considering suspending habeas corpus. And for those of you who don't know your Latin, this is like a foundational piece of not just American law, but this goes like British common law, like the 1200s, meaning that you have a right to be taken before a judge. They have to prove that, they have to bring you before a judge and you have a trial. You can't just be whisked away to a foreign country without due process. So what do we think about that? Corinne, do you want to start there? What do you think about the administration talking about suspending habeas corpus?
It certainly wasn't surprising. I think this is definitely a road that they've been interested in going down for quite some time. What's been interesting to me, and this was reflected in a recent town hall that was held by a Republican congressional representative, Victoria Spartz. She represents Indiana's 5th district. She's one of the few Republicans around the country who is still holding a town hall. She's the only one in Indiana that has held a town hall. And it was really interesting coming out of her mouth because she is an immigrant from Ukraine. And she said, if you come here illegally, you are not guaranteed due process. And so there really is a lot of misconceptions among the general public of who is eligible to be protected under the Constitution. And the truth is, every single person who has their feet on the soil in this country is protected by the Constitution, whether you are on vacation, whether you are going through the immigration process, whether you accidentally took a wrong turn and you went over the Canadian border into the US, and you are guaranteed protection by the Constitution. And there is so much exploitation happening of the American people, many of whom don't understand who those constitutional protections are for. And so to hear that coming out of Stephen Miller's mouth, he knows darn well the precedent has been upheld many times that you do not have to be a citizen to get those constitutional protections. And so that right to go before a judge is guaranteed to all of us. And I really hate that that's being, that lack of knowledge is being exploited.
Tim.
Yeah, I think it's the latest attempt by the Trump administration to throw bombs into the mix and make us watch those explosions rather than look at some of the more bread and butter issues that he is getting through while we look at these large explosions. I do think Stephen Miller does not have the best interest in mind of many of us. There is very much and very clear a law of habeas corpus in the United States. I wanted to say it's only been used and suspended 4 times in the United States. And so making sure we understand when that is and the difference between them. The first was Lincoln during the Civil War, in particular to protect Washington, D.C. from Maryland, in which there was confusion between if people were patriots or loyalists, or excuse me, if they were Confederates or Unionists. And when he did that not with the blessing of Congress. And it was unclear at the time who had exactly the right. Was it the president or was it Congress, or did both of them need to weigh in? And then in 1863, a couple years later, it got figured out, and it was very clear that Congress has the ability to suspend this should they need to, based off of very clear rules around invasion. And this is why you heard Stephen Miller use the word invasion to say we're having an invasion of immigrants right now. There were 3 other times where it happened, very isolated. There were 14 counties in South Carolina that were taken over by the KKK during Reconstruction, and the federal government came in and kicked them out. In the Philippines, there was an insurrection that was put down, and right after Pearl Harbor, Hawaii was put under. It was taken away so that they can make sense of this enormous bomb that was thrown there. So I want to put that in play because I watch a lot of right-stream media, and I heard a lot of people say, oh, the president has done this before. The president has the right to do this. Well, no, it's extremely clear that the president can't unilaterally go ahead. Not only that, but in 2004, Sandra Day O'Connor, Scalia, two of our most conservative judges, made it also clear again that you cannot have the president overturn habeas corpus. Want to make absolutely sure that this is not a legal thing should they go through with this.
Michelle, what are your thoughts on all this?
I think the one word that kind of comes to my mind when I hear these kinds of things is meat tenderizer. Sounds weird, but
Okay.
you look throughout Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0, his people, the underlings, the Stephen Millers, they will in interviews constantly throw out ideas, concepts, words to kind of test the waters, to test what the reaction. Pure distraction. It's to look over here so you don't see what we're doing on this side. But I think part of it also is to really numb and desensitize us to what's actually really happening when they use those words, which I honestly feel is more a Project 2025 strategy. And so I think we need to be really, really clear on the distinctions and like, Corinne and Tim have said, it's like we don't, they're using the terms invasions. Well, guess what? They have been using the word invasion for quite some time. They're just layering these things so that when they actually want to do a power grab, we've already kind of thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, because they've taken away our critical thinking on it. And it's not a sudden thing. It is a long time strategic. It's propaganda warfare. And I think we need to call it that. And the fact that people are willing to give up their own core rights. I mean, this is the fact that this even came out as news during the anniversary of the signing of the Magna Carta is like, hello, total disconnect here, right? So I just think that it's one of those, especially for people in Indiana, where a lot of people don't get, like, you start to ask where they get their news, and we are so siloed in our news feeds. You got half the group going, I don't even know that this is a thing, and the other half are ready to go, we've got to defend our borders. And I'm going, who exactly is invading Indiana? I'm just curious. Are we talking Kentuckians right now? I don't know.
And it is, using the word invasion and just kind of the dump of information, it's almost as if they are also counting on their own supporters, not remembering that they also told us a couple of days ago that border crossings are at an all-time low. Yeah. So are they counting on us to not remember that? So where is the invasion coming from? Is it people coming over from Illinois to buy fireworks? Like, what are we talking about?
Listen, I grew up in Northwest Indiana. Michigan City is kind of a tourist town. And in fact, Illinois people do invade every summer.
100% do. I grew up in Hammond. I can second that. It's a scourge.
I wanted to move on to the next topic.
Critical.
Yeah.
Let me just say, this is one of our critical checks and balances in the United States Constitution. Congress, it can't, president, you can't just unilaterally do things. And so if this fails, then we have failure, right? And so I think this is going to be one of the things that the Supreme Court stands up to, but we'll see as we move forward.
Yeah, and I want to move on. And Kurt, before I go any further, just give me a sound check here real quick.
Good morning.
Hey, you sound great. Awesome. So I'm going to start this next one with you. Other big story this week, the small Gulf nation of Qatar is so generously giving President Trump a $400 million airplane to use as Air Force One, and then take with him when he's done for his presidential library. Sounds like bribery to me. Kurt, what do you think?
Well, it's a violation of the Constitution. So, there's, I can't remember the exact verbiage on it, but no member of a representative of the United States can accept a gift on their behalf or behalf of the United States without congressional approval. So,
Yeah,
but
I want to say that's the emoluments clause.
yeah, but laws don't matter to these people. So, I think it's just more distraction. I'm a firm believer everything that's happening is the implementation of Project 2025. This is over 40 years in the making, uh, since the Ronald Reagan years. And that's
Mhm.
what this is all about. So all of these distractions about becoming the Pope and the airplane and all of these things, even though they're important and that we need to pay attention to them, um, they're distractions from people paying attention to truly what is going on. And I downloaded Project 2025. I've read it. I've referenced it many times, and it's absolutely frightening what has taken place. So, but it's what's going to be done about it? He's going to
Yeah.
take it. He's going to keep it, and it's.
And
I know that's a
I think
simple
it's
answer, but
telling.
hey, that's
Yeah.
how I believe in it. So,
Corinne, is this a situation where like this has been the big story all week? This is what people are talking about, and I think Kurt's onto something. Is this a distraction from the first thing we talked about, which is maybe legalese and jargony and not as sexy as a $400 million bribe, but way more important?
Well, I mean, again, in kind of like the emoluments clause, like, again, what average American is really going to care? When these kind of stories come out, I think of all of the political nerd reporters that I have worked with throughout my career. I love them dearly, but this is a story for them. I'm not saying it's not important. It is important that Qatar is influencing the United States in this way. We did see that Pam Bondi, the attorney, was a lobbyist for Qatar for a long time, and now she's in the administration, and now this plane is coming over. So there's a very obvious connection there. I'm not saying it's not important. These are the kind of stories that political nerd journalists get really amped up about. And for regular folks, it doesn't resonate. It kind of, even saying habeas corpus, I mean, we're talking emoluments and habeas corpus. These are not words that most people actually care about or can relate to. And this story, I mean, it was dominating the coverage. And I thought it was really, again, yes, strategic. And who know, how long this deal was in the works. This could have come out at any time. And then it comes out this week, maybe obviously because we are talking about habeas corpus, we're talking about other infringements on civil rights, but it doesn't feel like a story that anyone outside of the DC circle is going to care about.
Yeah. You know what
Kash
people do
Patel
care about?
Kash Patel was a consultant for Qatar too. So
yeah.
remember that.
Sure
Easy.
was.
Easy.
Yeah. So
what people
You
do
got to
care
say
about.
that even
Yeah.
Ted Cruz and Rand Paul have stood up to this one. So there is a lot
Laura
of
Loomer,
resistance going on, even deep into the Republican Party and the libertarian way of thinking with Rand Paul. So I don't. This is one that is just not well thought out, and I think it's another, just a bomb thrown into the mix so that we watch it rather than other things.
Well,
this one will be
being a
content
being a content creator, and Corinne can relate to this, is that with a lot of the content creators out there that maybe do things a little bit different than the way we do things, boy, they took it and ran. Everybody was making a story, and so I don't want to be critical of them, but I judge a lot of times how important a story is by the way that these content creators grab hold of them, because a lot of them do that just for clicks and likes, and they don't really do it for the informational part of it. So, I mean, literally, when you opened up any kind of social channel that we're on, that's all you heard about. So it tells me a lot. But
what I'd like to then ask a huge favor for Karina and Kurt and Tim, even with Project Next. It's like, on stories like this, because they're going to have to spend money to make it secure, right? I don't know how much that's going to be. Could we please follow the money? Could we please say, where the hell are the fiscal conservatives on this? Because for every $1 million that they're using to refurbish a plane while we've still bought other planes, it's like that's coming out of all of the different line items that they're trying to cut. Because of course they got to preserve the tax relief, right? So we're going to be, what are the line items that get cut? How does that affect, what trickles down for Hoosiers in that fiscal cut?
That's a good point, because we talk about government waste, Doge doing its thing. How is this not frivolous? How is a fancy plane not frivolous, especially at a time when tariffs are being implemented, trade relationships are being strained that do have real impacts on people who are working in the industries affected, especially in a state like Indiana and other manufacturing heavy states. How is this not, you're getting a fancy plane, but President Trump is asking us to make a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, short-term pain, long-term gain. I'm still convinced they only like that phrase because it rhymes, because there is no gain that's going to come to those of us who are going to make the short-term sacrifice, right? But this dude gets a new plane. I think that's more, following the money is more where it resonates instead of the emoluments piece of it, because we know there will be no accountability in the legal system for this kind of move, but maybe there could be an accountability in the hearts of people that are like, I just got laid off. Are you for real with a plane?
Yeah. You
mentioned
the tariffs, and that's a
plane apart. They're going to have to take this plane apart piece by piece in order to look through and see if it has listening devices in, whatever it might be. Literally, this is what they would have to do with it, and that'll cost millions of dollars. It'll take time, etc. And I just think if you think it all the way through, Michelle, as you're saying, where's the money going? There's just such trickle down effects of this, and it's just blind to the other policies that are being put through right now by the administration.
And that's true, Tim. In a normal situation, they would have to do that, but I question whether or not they really are concerned about that. After all, when we use Signalgate to I mean, seriously, I mean that it's a valid point, but do you really think they care about that? I mean,
it's a good question.
Good question. It's just like the money, Michelle. That's a great point. Do you really think that people care about the money? I mean, hasn't there been enough cases where that's been brought out to the forefront and people just kind of go, I mean,
well, people are worried about their own money, right? We're worried about our own financial situations, and the administration is messing with that too. So this week, tariffs, are they on? Are they off? Are they on? Are they off? Beginning of the week, I guessed we reached some sort of agreement, or at least a pause with China to lower the tariffs from like 145% down to 30%, at least for the next 90 days. Does this give you any, sense of stability or normalcy? Michelle, I want to start with you here.
Yeah. So earlier when we were all just offline, we were talking about, game on, game off, car. That's how it feels like right now. But I do want to say that what gets often lost is that when you are changing and yo-yoing these things so much, first off, how do corporations in Indiana, how do the companies actually make a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? They can't right now. So everything's kind of on hold. But more importantly, farmers, guess what? They're not going to get for the next year the soybean contracts, the corn contracts, the whatever contracts, right? We've lost that. So what I get so frustrated about is that, again, the national narrative always takes precedent and it always goes to Wall Street. Well, Wall Street, basically, they're making money. I cannot stress this enough. They make money on the chaos, the ups and the downs. I want to take everybody back to a moment. This was years and years ago when Enron, I don't know if y'all remember the Enron scandal.
Oh, yeah.
I was living in Los Angeles during fire season when Enron was pulling a whole bunch of bullshit. And there's, now thankfully it's come out and there's audio of these guys within Enron calling, and as they're watching, and this was within 10 miles of my house, a transformer blowing up from a fire, and they're saying, burn, baby, burn, because they knew they could make money off of that destruction. So what we're seeing with these tariffs is basically chaos theory times 10. And they're creating money on the upside, they're creating money on the downside, and we're losing people across the and Corinne's going to talk about what's happening up in her neck of the woods. But I think again, we have got to stay focused on who is becoming the expendable, and naming that, and naming the exploitation, and naming the extraction that's happening, and staying laser focused on what really matters, as opposed to playing the game of, oh, it's up, it's down, 7D chess, as Corinne has said before. It's like, no, it's not a brilliant strategy here.
I think we're up to 9D chess. 9D.
I think so. Yeah.
Ooh, wow.
It's good.
Yeah.
Super complicated.
Michelle, why do you hate capitalism so much? I mean, isn't this just the market working the way it's supposed to?
I'd love to see free market. I would. All right. But we don't have that. We've got oligarchs, kleptocracy, all of those big fancy words. And at the same time, if the goal is to bring manufacturing back to the US, we're not going to magically have that happen in the next month. How many years does it take to build all of the infrastructure for that? And we're going to talk, I believe, later on about even energy in the US and in Indiana, but it's like, we don't have that infrastructure. At the same time that they are divesting from public education to build a workforce for these things, I don't know, like I just get so frustrated because we get told these fancy words and all of this thing, and there's not a vision or an investment in what it takes to actually get there. They want the big beautiful cake, and they haven't bothered to even go buy the ingredients. And yeah, there we go.
Because they don't know how to make the cake.
We've never had to make it, right?
Yeah. So that's why. I mean,
the infrastructure thing that Michelle said is key, and this is coming, for 40 years, especially in the era post Reagan deregulation. This is how manufacturers, distributors, etc., increase their bottom line by moving production overseas. And so that was decades in the making. To think that this is going to turn around in a year is really short-sighted. And the short-term pain, long-term gain, those long-term gains are not coming to the workforce. The people who will be asked to sacrifice, who will be laid off, who will lose their health insurance for this manufacturing readjustment, even if this magically works, and we can project out to some future where the vast majority of manufacturing is happening on American soil, those of us who have sacrificed are going to be the ones continuing to pay the price. And all we have to do is just look at the financial portfolios and family wealth statistics of folks who went through the recession. Nobody has regained their wealth. The wealth that families had from 07 and 08 never came back. The folks who laid people off and rode out the recession, their net worths have exploded. They have gained an incredible amount of wealth because all they have to do is cut overhead. They buy some shares at a discounted price. They wait it out. They have the wealth to wait it out. And those of us who were laid off during that time, we've never recovered. And that's the reality, that people are saying, well, it's just a recession. I'm like, oh my gosh, y'all, you have no idea. There's no such thing as just a recession.
You talk about the wealth. Hurts real people. Go back to the Reagan era and see how the wealth has separated in the last 40 years and see the difference.
Oh, those are some depressing charts.
They are shocking. They are shocking. It's absolutely crazy. So you're spot on with that. So
I do want to wrap up our national segment here shortly, but yeah, go ahead, Tim.
The economy is not any individual policy, right? We're talking about tariffs right now. There's so many there's puts and takes, and there's ins and outs, and there's things that go up and that go down. So when we're talking about tariffs, again, the whole Trump administration way of thinking is get us to look at one thing. In the meantime, we, as you said, stock market fluctuation, now crypto fluctuation allows people to make money. But very quietly, Moody's, the people who give credit ratings, has taken away our last AAA plus credit rating. So the country is going to have a harder time borrowing money. Not only that, but bond markets are suffering. And that is something that, is too hard to understand. But let me make it easy.
But these things usually don't happen together. Yeah.
Right. And when bond markets go down and it's hard, it means foreign countries don't want to invest in us as much. And you might say, well, that's great. We don't want China investing in us. But every country invests in every other country. You're really undermining the buoyancy of the economy. And then one last thing, Corinne, with what you said, if this magically works, well, labor protections have been gutted. And so once this magically works, we have a whole bunch of factories where people aren't able to protect themselves working for these factories. So we have to also think about labor protections while we're thinking about tariffs.
Last thing on the national front before we get into Indiana news, and I think this makes a nice segue. One of Indiana's favorite sons, Pete Buttigieg, was in Iowa this week. And generally, when somebody's in Iowa a couple years before a presidential cycle, that can only mean one thing. Is Pete running for president this year? Kurt?
Me?
In 28, sorry.
I absolutely think he is considering it very much so, especially I think the more that he speaks out and the more that he goes out and talks to gatherings, his popularity, people are starting to get to know him, and his popularity is absolutely increasing. So I think he's a very strong contender for that. I'm just wondering if it's all for naught, though. Are we going to have elections in 2028 or even 2026? So
yeah, fair
but yeah,
question.
I think he's a strong candidate. He's very popular with the millennials and Gen Zers, and even with a lot of us older dudes. I support a middle-aged gay man. I think he's spot on with so much that he says. So,
and I mean, as soon as he said, because we all knew that he moved up to Michigan to better his political chances. He knew he wasn't going to have those kind of same chances here in Indiana. So when he announced that he was not seeking the Senate seat and he was not seeking the governor's seat, it was I think it was pretty clear at that point that this is what he's going for. But I'm saying Pete, I had the pleasure of working with Pete for many years when I was in TV in South Bend. Loved working with him. He was a great mayor. We are still seeing the fruits of some of his policies come to fruition in South Bend, which is really nice considering how much crap he got for it in his early years of his administration in South Bend. So it would be really fun to see him make this run. But if he's going to Iowa, dude, come to Indiana. It's a shorter drive. Come hang out with us.
Yeah.
You got to come here too, because this kind of gets to what the national strategy is going to be for Democrats going forward. And obviously, Iowa's electoral votes are not going to go to Buttigieg. Indiana's electoral votes would not go to Buttigieg or any other Democratic candidate. But when you get Democrats excited about a presidential candidate, you get those doors knocked, you get those down ballot boosts. So that's I'm waiting to kind of see the national strategy flip a little bit, that we can't keep banking on our urban centers in swing states. You have to start paying attention to folks in red states. We're not disposable. We can be an effective voice for Democrats from the city council all the way up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't give up on Buttigieg getting our electoral votes. I think there's an immense reordering going on right now, similar to the reordering that happened a long time ago with after Reagan with Democrats and Republicans. I think we have a reordering chance right now of those who don't have and those who have, and seeing where they go into which party. And so Those things happen on tipping points, and if that tipping point happens in the next 3 years, I wouldn't put Indiana out of the race.
And the only reason I said that, Tim, and I hope you're right, I would love to see Indiana go for Buttigieg or another Democratic candidate. The only reason I said that is because I don't want the only value of coming to a red state to be, we think we can get their electoral votes. The value
That's
has to
absolutely
be
right.
beyond that. It has to
Mhm.
be Democratic energy that has been missing. This is one thing I talk about a lot. I agree with Jim Banks. When Jim Banks was in the State House, he was talking about Democrats ignoring communities in Indiana. And he's been saying that for the last 15 years. And I agreed with him on that, because that's the hole that we're trying to dig ourselves out of. And whether or not Indiana goes for Buttigieg on the presidency, you get that Democratic energy, it's going to start to make a difference, but you got to be willing to do it for a decade or more.
Well, and I think
All right.
Democrats are missing the boat when it comes to that strategy, and they've had this for a long time, and that's why we've lost so many elections. The fact that Trump won 91% of the rural population vote in the last election, and Democrats are not shocked by that right there, and are not working on that, is just mind-boggling to me. To me, that speaks volumes. But this is the
All right.
frustration with the Democratic Party. So.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah.
I want to move on to Indiana news. We're running a little over time right now, so what we're going to do is do this quickly. I'm going to give each person one headline and let you talk on it before moving on to the next one in a little segment I like to call Around the Corn. Michelle, Mike Braun says no to the Sunbucks program. So apparently elementary school kids in Indiana are going hungry this summer.
Yeah. Again, another commitment to take from our children, which makes no sense. I think the thing I want to name most with that is the idea that they can just go to one central location. You go to the school or whatever and pick up your food. Okay, that lives in the brain of people who live within public transit. They live within so many, right? They have stay-at-home families, whatever the deal is. What
you
does
have a
that,
good working car, right? Yeah, all those things.
So what does that speak to the 13-year-old that's home? Both parents are out working, and he'd have to be on his bike for so many miles. And so, yeah, it just, again, communicates that we can't afford food. We can't afford food. It's a lie. It's a myth, but it creates that desperation that can then be divided. So, yeah.
Let's move on to Tim. Tim, right here in my neck of the woods at IU, Mike Braun is overreaching here as well, stepping in and taking over control of the entire board of trustees at IU. He already had 6 out of 9 appointees. Does he need those other 3?
He doesn't need those other 3. Well, he needs those other 3 to execute a plan. What's interesting is that I'm starting to get texts from people outside of Indiana just yesterday, from people telling me about this story. Like, hey, are you aware of this? I was like, yes, we are very aware this is happening in our state, but it's starting to spread nationally right now. This is, first of all, the way it was done, and those of you with your eyes on the State House, it was done within the last 24 hours, last 12 hours. It was kind of slipped into the end of the legislative session, so that no one could mark it up or look at it, and take control of IU. One thing I do think this will have the effect of is, again, this great reordering. I think Bloomington is going to be upset across the board, Monroe County, and then as it spreads through Indiana, through elsewhere, it's something to make sure that we have voting power in this next election to put Braun in his place on this one.
Absolutely. Kurt, the LEAP, outside of Lebanon, there's this district where our government was planning this big advanced manufacturing campus, right? Halfway between Indianapolis and Purdue. So that's their big plan. Well, they're scooping up farmland, wanting to give it away to the big companies to lure manufacturing. This week, they sold a big hunk of land at a loss. What's going on at the IEDC? Is this organization operating ethically with oversight? What's going on? What are they doing?
You think I know what's going on with? I mean, seriously, I have no clue. It's just a perfect example where it's not really about the money that's wasted or spent, or it's really not about the money. It's about the control of the citizens of our state and what their plan is to do in our state. They want in our nation. Okay, they want people to be sick, stupid, and poor. That's their plan. So I think this falls right in line with that kind of thinking. They don't care about the money. I mean, come on, look at this administration in our state and what they're doing with money. It's just crazy. But you know,
Yeah.
they have to save
And
face,
yet,
somehow. So this is an attempt of it, I think. So
I'd like to think stuff like this is eventually going to add up and ruin Republicans' reputation as the party of fiscal responsibility, because they haven't been for some time. On the economy, Corinne, up in your neck of the woods, you are in like primo RV country. They're seeing some layoffs up there. That's not a good sign.
What? Layoffs? I thought these tariffs were going to be good for us. Goodness gracious. Yes, we had two major manufacturers up here in Elkhart County announce pretty substantial layoffs coming in June. So these are going to affect workers in Elkhart and LaGrange counties. And of course, one announcement of layoffs does not a recession make. However, it is important that just a couple of days after this layoff announcement came out, Governor Braun was up here in Elkhart County at the RV Power Breakfast. It's held at the RV Hall of Fame every year. Yes, we have an RV Hall of Fame. We have an RV museum. It's fun. You can come up here and tour RVs. It's a blast. But he was at that breakfast. And what was really interesting is that I made a couple of videos about this, and I had a lot of people arguing with me that you don't understand the industry. This has nothing to do with tariffs, blah, blah, blah. Literally, Governor Braun stood on that stage and talked about these layoffs being related to tariffs. Duh, because everybody knows. So Braun's saying it, y'all need to get on the same page. Check your Signal chat for your Republican talking points for the day, because some of you are missing it. And what these manufacturers cited was a need to realign based on supply chain costs and economic insecurity. And that is something that a lot of people, again, like Tim was saying, the economy is not just one thing, right? It's not the stock market. It's not just job numbers. It's all of these things put together. And when you're on shaky ground and you don't know, like Michelle was saying, you can't play for next year, you can't plan for next year, that's when people are going to lay off, because they are projecting out a couple of quarters. They know what their supply costs are going to be, especially here in Indiana. The tariffs from Canada, those are going to hurt us the most, because our manufacturing and assembly industries rely heavily on the parts, on lumber, steel, and aluminum. And those prices have gone up. Therefore, RV manufacturers are going to cover their behind. And that is what they want. They just need to cut their bottom line and ride this out. And reducing workforce is the way to do it. And Tim touched on labor protections, or the lack thereof, that we have in Indiana. And as I was reading this layoff notice, it was really glaring to me that there's all these questions. Do you have union protection? No. Is there health insurance coverage offered? No. Is there any kind of severance package offered? No. All of these people are literally out on their butts with no job and no health insurance, because there literally is no protection. And I will point back to what Republican State Senator Ryan Mishler said when Indiana got its $2.4 billion revenue shortfall projection. He is a longtime Republican state senator, very conservative guy. And he said, this one, speaking of this financial forecast, scares me a lot more than before, because in 2008 was the last time Indiana received a devastating revenue forecast report like this. And Senator Mishler said, in 2008, we have something we don't have now, and that is federal support. So even he was making the distinction that anything that Hoosiers are going to go through this time around, we are going to go through on our own, because we are not going to get compassion, empathy, or money from the Trump administration.
Yeah, let's stay on that road with our money disappearing. Tim, are tolls coming to Indiana's interstates? Not just the toll
Oh,
road.
boy.
We have that one. We've had that one forever. Now they want to toll 65 and 70, maybe more. You ready to pay
We
all
got to
that?
make this state, with what has done with the budget shortfall, with figuring out how to cut Medicaid and health, the federal Medicaid dollars going down and therefore not matching as much. Our budget is in turmoil right now. And so we got to make some money some way. And it might be through tolls, right? And I wouldn't say no to this. I wouldn't say that this isn't happening, simply because you got to figure out the puts and takes that we talked about in this economy, right? Just you take money away, you got to get it back. And if another way to do it is just cut deeper, especially with Medicaid. But I mean, bad health costs money. Can't say that enough. Bad health costs money. And if you're taking people's healthcare benefits away in order to save money, you're just shooting yourself in the foot in the future. And so I think tolls are just one of these ways of trying to make up for it, so that they don't have to hurt us in different ways.
Also on the infrastructure front, Michelle, maybe we're getting some more nuclear reactors coming to Indiana. What could go wrong?
No. Oh yeah. Let's over promise energy, and then let's also have pie in the sky ideas on being the incubator for an energy source that so far does not really have any solid working examples that have made it within budget. And then we're going to pass those costs on to consumers. So I mean, it's like I don't see it being done safely. Indiana's already 50th worst in the nation for environment. And they haven't addressed like what they're going to do with any of the waste. Yeah, I highly recommend people, if they're concerned about utility costs and all of this, to follow the Citizens Action Coalition. They have been tracking energy use and utilities for decades in Indiana, and they have a lot of resources that they offer with regard to small modular nuclear reactors, with regard to wind and solar. I just want to also name, like, we're chasing a technology because I think consultants have basically, blown it up. Hey, look how wonderful this is. While we have gotten rid of net metering, while we do not have, we have allowed local municipalities to trade on a lot of myths and misinformation around solar and wind.
Yeah.
And the state has not brought in robust infrastructure and protections around having a diversified energy program. And it just feels like when it comes to these nuclear reactors, it reminds me very much in the early days of computers. I worked in the software industry, and we would talk about vaporware. And what you did was you sold a program. So marketing did their job great. And then behind the scenes, everybody's scrambling to catch up. And the end consumer was actually paying a maintenance fee for the development of the things and the bug fixes and all of that. And it was known in the industry as vaporware. And I feel like SMNRs are the vaporware of the utility industry right now.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that we've got communities in this state who are actively lobbying against renewables and for nuclear. What is you doing, baby?
Well,
Kurt, yeah,
windmills cause cancer.
windmill, yeah, they're
They're
ugly,
not
right?
windmills,
Ooh.
so
And the
Um,
birds. Remember
Well,
the
and
birds.
I want to
and
say
yeah,
too,
they kill birds. Yeah.
when I was looking at all of that, I was like, I actually went back to some old articles that were talking about some of the fights locally around wind and solar, right? And what was very interesting was up in Stark County, there's a farmer named Norm Welker who I guess he was putting the solar farm, right? And he was talking about how, you know, um, people were objecting to, well, it could grow corn, like you're not growing corn. He's like, but they don't realize that the corn that you're passing is probably being used for ethanol.
Mhm.
So I think there's just a lot of ideas of like Purdue University is doing huge experiments around the combination of solar and farming and all of that. And I feel like we lack an imagination to look at things differently or to have the conversations. Again, we talk about, data driven, science based, truth and reality, and seeing and testing examples and going, does this work? Does this not work for us? But I found for myself personally, like this idea of taking farmland and putting solar panels on it. Initially it was like, what the heck are we doing? And I will say I'd like to see more solar panels on friggin' roofs and parking structures and all of that. So don't get me wrong about
every
that.
public building in the
Every
state
should have
should
that.
have,
Every
in
should
the
have that.
country should have
And
solar
we should
panels on
have
the roof.
community solar, and we should have all of these things. But what dawned on me was, and they talk about this, the evolution of farming. And the fact that I drive now and I'm seeing, there might be a cornfield. And again, my brain goes to cornflake cereal. Like that's where my brain goes to. But we know for a fact that that's not. It's either feed for cattle or it's going into ethanol, right? Okay. Then I go by the same field, the next year, whatever. And now it's got maybe red clover and it's a cover crop. That's a new innovation to protect the soil. Um, and so this particular farmer was saying that when he put his panels in, underneath are all the flowers blooming and the ecosystem's coming back. And so he's making money generating much needed energy while the environment is actually thriving underneath and there's no noise. They go, we can hear the crickets again. And I want to say, kind of going a little bit of a different direction, but one of the things that's being really pulled in are all these data centers. Okay. So we're talking about energy and then the
Mm-hmm.
amount of energy
Mm-hmm.
being consumed with data centers, which I believe right now we've got 48 data centers and Citizens Action is tracking an additional 30 being proposed. So 78 data centers. I'm like,
Wow.
if we were a dog, how many ticks can we afford? But I just want to say that. Um, but I feel like we don't understand fully what can be used and how our land can be used regeneratively, in good stewardship, in partnership with farmers. I'm like, if it's a matter of a family farm being able to use their land to generate much needed energy in a way that they feel comfortable doing it, in a way that is, respectful of neighbors. So you've got ways of hiding certain things and whatnot. I understand that. To me, I feel like it allows them to keep their farm. And what I don't want to see is foreclosures on these family farms simply because they don't have a market for their crop because thank you to the tariffs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to cover here in the state, Kurt, for you, 6th District Congressman Jefferson Shreve has been in the House for 4 months and has already made hundreds of stock trades, including companies that are sort of within his committee assignment purview. Sounds kind of skeezy if you ask me. What do you think?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely skeezy. I mean, that that should be removed anyone who is elected in office should not be allowed to do that. Period. I don't care, and it should be an immediate dismissal. That should
Hmm.
not be allowed. Okay, and
And I don't
but this
care if you
is
got an
not.
R or a D in front of your name,
It
right?
doesn't matter what you have. That should not be allowed at all. And this is just what we know. I mean, how much has Mike Braun made so far, and how much is, Micah Beckwith, and all of these people. I mean, this is a problem that's been in our nation for a long time. And I think the one thing that's really exciting about the Gen Z and millennials coming up is that they're not like saying no, we're not into this, man. These people that are making billions and being paid by billionaires and have all this PAC money and are making, inside, they don't want this. So I do believe that there is change that's going to happen in the future. And I think you're going to see more and more people get into politics that do not take money, from big corporations, and do not, although it's needed, I mean, but in a fair way. So, but I think trading on the stock market, investments, whatever the case may be, done by a politician or elected official should be outlawed. It should not be allowed.
I just want this is bad on a state and a federal level, and
Hmm.
there's even a website for you to follow Nancy Pelosi's trades,
Right. She's one of the
because
worst.
she's so good at it. She's
Yeah.
so good at it. So
Yeah.
it goes way beyond DNR for this, and
Uh-huh.
it gets back
Oh,
to
yeah.
this one big thing that I'm sure we're going to talk about right now around the reshuffling of what it means to be conservative and progressive.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I will save this for Shreve. His ability to pick up the insider trading grift this quickly, impressive. Impressive.
Well, he's been rich for a long time.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is second nature to wealthy folks. That's where we talk about somebody coming in
Yeah.
who has that amount of money to play with.
Mhm.
You got nothing to
Yeah.
lose. Just start
I-
making more money.
Yeah. I think he had this figured out a long time ago and just saw this as another avenue of being able to make more money.
Just
So,
he's getting
Mhm.
more information now. Yep.
yeah. So,
So I do want to pivot to our one big thing here. Now, I planned on only going an hour. That leaves us 4 minutes. So listen, I'd love to keep y'all. Do y'all want to go a little long? I'd love to have this conversation. For those of you, if you are watching on Instagram Live, though, I want to say the stream kicks us off at an hour. So if you are over there, find us on Project Next YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook live feed. That said, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, fascist, these words all get thrown around a lot in the discourse. And I think it's going to help just for us on this show and for everybody to really understand what those words mean. And I'm going to lead off by positing this, and then I'm going to let y'all go at it. The opposite of liberal is not conservative. It is illiberal. We here in the United States, I believe rightfully, are proud that we invented modern liberal democracy. Liberal in that sense, I think, means we have rule of law. We vote. We have representative democracy. And within that spectrum, you can have folks who are more conservative or more progressive, but they all exist within that liberal spectrum. Whereas things like, Viktor Orban's Hungary or Putin's Russia or increasingly Trump's America are illiberal. So they exist outside of that spectrum entirely. Corinne, I'll let you go first here.
Yes. So this is such an interesting conversation because here in the US, we are trapped in this two-party system. This is not something we see in other countries. You see so much more opportunity for diverse opinions and other parties being created and other movements being swept up because you get to make your own party. Here, everybody has to fit under one of these two labels, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, at least for the foreseeable future. And so within each of those labels, you do have a spectrum. And it has definitely changed for me over the years. I certainly have always aligned myself with the Democratic Party since I've really started to understand what the politics of that meant. But certainly I think for me, post Citizens United was kind of one of my big flips, one of my big, okay, I am going much more on the leftist progressive end of the spectrum. And in policy making, it's not even, I can have my own personal political views, and then I can have what I think is going to make good policy, at least in the short term. I don't always think the views that I kind of hold in my heart that sing to me are going to make the best policy in the short term necessarily. On top of where my views are, I want compromise. I think that is always where we are going to see the best legislative policy come out, is through compromise and discourse. And when you look at states like Indiana with a Republican trifecta, or you look at states like New York with a Democratic trifecta, when there's not conflict in the legislative process, you are leaving out a huge chunk of your population. And that is really where I come back to, is I want there to be more conflict. And post Citizens United, post Project Red Map that the Republicans began around the same time that Citizens United came out, we have seen that lack of compromise because of gerrymandering and extreme money influxes from conservative super PACs, especially. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it tip a bit. I'm seeing it change a little more, and how people interpret and think about what it means to be a Democrat or a Republican. And I really hope that as that continues to evolve, that Democrats especially will be a party that they claim that they are, of a big tent, of bringing everybody in under that umbrella, recognizing that not all of us are going to have the same views, but we have a similar goal. So certainly the words are evolving, and what the parties mean are evolving. How that plays out in practice is a different question.
Yeah, and they've changed positions over time. I mean, well, if you go back to the founding of the Republican Party, they were like radical abolitionists, and the Democrats were the conservative party. And frankly, the Democrats contained a lot of conservatives, up through the 60s and 70s, and then they sort of all got pulled out over time by the Nixon-Reagan Southern strategy and focusing on race and cultural issues. I think I'm a lot like you. Like, I think at heart, I'm a liberal. I want to compromise, but because the Overton window has shifted so far to the right, I feel like I've had to shift left for the sake of balance. Like, as a negotiating tactic, if you're hoping to end up here, you don't start here. You start out here, and they start out there, and you come here. If you start here in the middle with a far right adversary, you're just going to keep getting dragged to the right. Tim, you're probably like a little more conservative than some of the rest of us. What do you think about all this?
I mean, I hate the labels, right? And I hate these words. They've lost their meaning, right? And part of my role on this show was to represent some of the Republicans who are out there and what they're saying. And so I did a lot of research on the right-wing media for every single one of these things we've talked about, which was an enlightening couple days of research. But what I'm seeing is that we've been given a false choice as a country between these words. And we've been given a false choice. You either have to cut everything ruthlessly, like Doge is doing. You have to spend and expand what we have. And those are your only two choices. And I feel like that is very lazy, and it's supported by current politicians and supported by sided media. There's a different way forward, which is being responsible, using innovations to take what we have, change it, adjust it, iterate on it to make it work better for more people. And you could do that in such a way where you're cutting costs, changing the cost structure of what you're making. I have history doing this with telemedicine. I have history doing this with other pieces of healthcare, both in Washington and as a business and as an individual provider. And so I think this false choice gets us into a problem where we're fighting rather than figuring out a way to work together to change things.
Yeah. You hear this. You mentioned the media, the attack from the far right forever has been, oh, the liberal media. Frankly, given the definition I gave earlier, I want the media to be liberal in the way that I want them to uphold American values of plurality and democracy and the rule of law. So again, I think that sounds great. I want all of our media to be liberal. Even the conservative media should at least hold to those things. What is the modern Republican Party conserving? They're not conservative, are they, Michelle?
I wouldn't say so, especially right now, and especially with Doge. It's basically annihilation, bring everything down to build something, authoritarian, I guess. I'd say for me, because I've come out of working in nonpartisan spaces, what's been very interesting is in that work, you're actually just focusing straight on trying to bring people together around a problem, brainstorm solutions, maybe build power to influence legislation or whatever, but you're coming together across all of these different, what I'd almost call tributaries of thinking, right? And I feel like what's happening is because we're being reduced to a single voice, that the best ideas will never emerge. And people, even when they go vote, for how many elections has it been? This is the most important vote you'll ever make. Otherwise it's the collapse of everything we know. And just vote for the lesser of the two evils, right? And so we wonder why Indiana is like one of the lowest, if not the lowest, voter turnout, because for the most part, I think people are so tired of the partisan rhetoric. However, last year when I ran for House District 60, and I would be door knocking in my district, I would actually have people, the first question they would ask, are you Republican or Democrat? And you'd sit with this hesitant to answer because you didn't know like what was going to get a door slammed in your face or open a conversation. It was the weirdest thing, and it still is a weird thing. And it's unfortunate because I don't know that we go into any other environment where that's the number one thing. It's like, speaking to Tim, as a doctor, it's like, I don't go to the doctor's office and say I'm Republican or Democrat and how are you going to treat me? More importantly, though, they might ask me, do you have insurance or not? So that's a problem right there. But I think we need to name, like, I want to do a shout out to the libertarians, that they have, they're a growing base of voters that have no real political home in Indiana because we have straight ballot voting, straight ticket vote. And so it's very, very hard for them to have their values even brought to the forefront. And yet I would say that sometimes their laser focus on certain things, they actually offer some really, really good ideas, or at least they are asking the questions to get to the heart of the matter instead of all the BS that the others tend to go into. And so I feel like we really, really need to get back to having those robust conversations, iron sharpening iron, the best ideas coming to the forefront. And I think we need to call out that what we're seeing at the state level and definitely at the federal level is not a willfulness of wanting to have the best ideas. It's wanting to have control and maintain control at all costs, no matter the harm.
Kurt, sorry. I think a lot of we hit
You
on this.
stumped him, Michelle. Scott's rarely
No,
speechless.
it's true. It's true. You got me.
He's just trying to figure out what to ask me.
You can see his wheels turning. I love it.
It's taken a while to get him moving.
Scott's just being cautious because he knows where I stand, and he's trying to bring up, how can I approach this and not set off the
about
alarm
this with the two-party system. It really kind of narrows the range of discussion. I think like a lot of my positions are just not even discussed. Like that's just off the table entirely. And Michelle gave a shout out to libertarians. I'd like to see more parties. I'd like to see Greens be relevant, whether or not you agree with them or not. Kurt, you know, more than 2 parties. What do you think about that? Is it practical? How do we get there?
Well, I think personally, these are my opinions. Okay, I think we have more than 2 parties within the 2-party system. I mean, we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
progressive liberals, we have Democrats, we have centrist. I mean, so you can go, and I think that's part of the problem with the messaging that we have as a Democratic Party in our state and in our country, is that we do have so many angles that we're coming from in our beliefs as far as being liberals and conservatives. And I agree with Tim. I hate all of these labels that are put on these things, but that's where we are. And to expand on Michelle's point, yeah, people want to know if you're Democrat or Republican. It wasn't that way 40 years ago. That's not what came up. You had discussions about what was going on in our country. I was brought up a Catholic Democrat in a Kennedy type atmosphere. That's where I come from, and I've since walked away from religion and grew my own beliefs and everything. I will also tell you I have become more of an extreme progressive liberal since 2016 when he came down the escalator, because I hated this guy in the 90s when I first was exposed to him on the Howard Stern show, and I knew what shit show was heading our way. So, but people, this is too complicated for people. People don't understand these labels. They don't. Ask somebody what a libertarian is. They don't know. They can't even define what a conservative is or what a Democrat is. We are categorized by people because people think in a simple way and they're not educated. We have a festival here in my hometown every September, and we have a parade at the end of the festival. And last year I made a bunch of flyers and walked with the Democratic Party, and Lori Camp was in town, and we were campaigning for her. And I live in a red area. Okay, Larissa Sweet won 83% of the vote. Okay, I mean, this is where I live. We have more churches in my town than we do manufacturing facilities. So this is where I live. I believe this, and I've said this. People are one issue voters, and the main reason people vote Republican is because we believe in abortion. I think I know that's a simple way to categorize this, but that's the feedback I get. We're baby killers. They will never vote for a Democrat or think in a democratic way.
Yeah.
And there's
That's the
some
feel.
really interesting psychology here that I've been diving into a little. The inability for the human brain to understand issues on a spectrum. We need things to be binary. We need them to be good or bad, left or right. And there's so much interesting, like diving into this. It's why understanding gender being on a spectrum, or even sexuality being on a spectrum, that's very difficult for people, because they do, like Tim was saying, he hates labels on things. People want to label things because it makes them feel sure about their reality. And if their reality is being challenged or being saying, hey, it's actually not black and white, we could go through so many policies that are being demonized by one side and praised by the other, and we could easily pick apart all of the gray that exists, all of the things that are actually both good and bad at the same time. But that's not the way humans process information, and we don't ever want to have our worldview challenged when we think we're sure about something. And that kind of certainty is a security blanket for a lot of people.
No matter how unsure they are about it, this is what they want.
I'd
I
also
agree.
say fundamentalism of any but fundamentalism requires binary thinking. So the more we become fundamentalists, you see that. Interesting. And I tell people this all the time. You know what else uses binary thinking? Machines. So in an AI world, we are being driven into a binary thinking as well. Those two things are happening at the same time. But I'd love to hear Dr. Peck's view on this.
I think the binary thinking is what happens when you're scared. It's what happens when you're tired. We've all been in the situation,
fight or flight.
When we're tired, and then we're mean or snap at our loved one, right? The same person who, when you're not stressed, you are completely embracing and giving everything you have to them. We are in a position right now where our media, which supports our politicians, have put us in a position where we're scared, where we're fearful, where we're on our heels. And so we are coming up with this, I believe in this, I believe in this, rather than let me think about this and find a better way forward where we can work together. And so the more we can remove ourselves, Kurt, I heard you say you don't watch MSNBC anymore or what it
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah.
For my life, I need to dive into all of this media at the same time. But I do encourage people to remove themselves from some of this fearfulness that is being inundated on us. Step back for a moment, sit at the kitchen table, maybe with your legs crossed, and talk about some things.
Yeah,
I love that,
I just
Tim.
don't watch TV network news. Is what
Yeah.
I stopped doing. I read and I get newsletters and things like that. I still read
Yep.
MSNBC's, news on in a hard form. I just remove myself from TV network news. It's a shit show.
And
I
I'll
think
throw
I-
in one plug. Oh, sorry, Michelle. I'll throw in one plug here because Scott did include a BBC link in our we got a shared Google Doc here,
Right.
kind of the stuff we're going to talk about. And I
Right.
think what Tim hit on and what we're all kind of hitting on here is exactly what we're trying to do here at Project Next, right? We want to take away the noise. We want to take away the sensationalism. We want to have real conversations. You know, someone commented how nice it is to watch a news show where people are not yelling at each other. And the other thing I will throw out there is I probably for the last 10 years or so, ever since I've, really been addicted or dependent upon my smartphone, I read news from around the world. So I have several apps that are French, German, Australian, Canadian. The BBC is a go-to all the time. For
Right.
me, that's a really good way to get a barometer on what is happening without contributing to what I see as a very toxic media environment. Because when you look at how media functions in the United States, it's very different from how for-profit media functions in other countries. And I'm not saying that other countries have it all figured out, but there certainly are things we could learn from them. So consuming my news coming from foreign sources and different foreign sources is really helpful because it feels like they are looking at it from a 10,000 foot view. And so you pull some of the, not that it isn't emotional and kind of sad to read some of these stories, but you pull some of the immediate sensationalism out of it and you're able to just digest information.
It's really hard to see it all when you're in it,
And we are in it.
Well, the other thing I want to say is like, I really try to operate from a lens of deep curiosity, like, and that's my goal, like to every person I meet is like deep curiosity. And I think one of the challenges right now, because we get put into this binary thinking and it can be also so subtle, is we are being told, this person's an ally, this person's an enemy, this person's whatever it is. And it's very easy to also feel like my side, my beliefs are superior. I've come across them in an organic way, whatever. And at the same time, not realizing my own bias, my own blind spots, the things that I literally don't know because I don't know. And I want to say that I feel like the Democratic Party has kind of carried itself with a certain superiority, this moral superiority of calling out things in such a way that there's no grace. There's no space for people to bring their full selves into something, because if a part of it is, well, we don't agree on that, well, sorry, we can't then be working together. So when we talk about building a big tent, it's messy. But I guess at the end of the day is, am I more committed to Hoosiers or am I more committed to what my ideology is? Am I more committed to bringing people into this thing that we want to build so that, my children have a great state to grow up in and an opportunity? And it's going to require every single person to participate in some manner in that. And the people that I disagree with, chances are, though, they've probably got some things that are going to then challenge me, and I will become better at what I need to do because they're going to come and challenge something. And I'm going, I didn't think of it that way. Let me go back and deep dive into something. And I either course correct some of my thinking, or I'm more committed because I've really researched and understand why I believe it versus because somebody told me to believe that. And I think there's a whole lot of space where people are being told to believe something, whether it be in their family, whether it be their pastor, whether it be some authoritarian figure or construct, and they themselves don't own those beliefs. But when we come and we challenge it, they feel like they have to protect some structure. And we've lost the ability to just have curious conversations and really go, why do you have that belief, or where did you get that from? How did you come to your belief that way? What was your journey
So
in
everything
getting
that
to
you
that?
said right there, don't you believe that that is the problem with our party in our state right now?
I
Don't
think,
you believe that so many of these people that have been planted in our party for so long, these gatekeepers, that is why there is such a division in our party, is because they are not, I mean, that's the conflict I experienced here in my local party. You know, I was
yeah,
picked apart because of my personal life instead of where I was standing from and what I was talking about. I mean, what is happening in our state with our party, to me, makes me sick to my stomach. I want to I want to take the matches and burn the house down, but I know I can't do that. But I think everything you said, you can apply that to, well, many things. But I think that's what's happening in our state. They don't want to
well,
hear it.
part of the reason why I created the Indiana Rural Summit was to work with House candidates across gerrymandered districts, because and most of these candidates were first time candidates like myself, or running really, really hard races. And there was real no support for them. And it was a way of building that kind of camaraderie, so to speak, right, as you're in the trenches. But one of the things that I find is how quickly we dismiss the small. We dismiss the thing that doesn't look like it's going to win, or it's going, and we define winning certain ways, right? And obviously in electoral, whoever wins the race, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. But here's the thing that I see for Indiana, and particularly rural Indiana: we have not had investment in Indiana as a state from the Democratic Party for a long time. We have not built up the backbench. We have not gone into our rural, if I hear one more person go, well, back when Obama won, it's like, how many years ago was that? Right? I'm tired of it, because what that does is it also puts it onto, we just need one person. We need an Obama. We need a Bernie Sanders. We have Trump because people believe they need a king. And I cannot stress that enough, that it's actually people power. It's
But
actually
don't you
people
think the lack
power.
of Democrats being able to do stuff for rural communities is because Democrats don't have a voice in the communities across our state? Where do Democrats have a voice in this state?
So that's
Where
part
do
of
they
what,
have a voice at? They don't have a voice in the rural communities.
right. And
They
that's
sure don't around here. So how are they going to be able to do anything when they
well,
don't even have a voice to be able to make any changes?
Well, I
I
would
mean,
say
that
I would say that if your local county party does not have the
is a joke.
infrastructure to support,
Is a
then
joke.
my recommendation is, if you go, or anybody listening, if like you don't feel like there is local county support for you, if you go to organizingindiana.org, there is a
Hmm.
list of all sorts of organizations. Get involved with an organization or multiple that have the values that you want, that are addressing the policies that you want to see change, because there are multiple ways of building power. And part of the thing is, building people power means getting involved, working together, and then moving that into electoral work, because at the end of the day, it's still
Michelle,
individuals talking to people to turn out votes.
I think that's one way, and Kurt, to address what you're saying, the way that I've gotten a voice in my very rural area, I live in, 80+% Republican voting area, um, is by trying to become part of community organizations. I am part of a lot of these, indivisible and larger organizations across that are political, but also there is I sit on the New Washington Beautification Committee as probably, I don't know, probably the only Democrat there, but we don't talk politics so much there about improving our community. We throw the Christmas tree lighting, we do the Easter egg hunt, etc. I've been involved with the local cattlemen's association, right? Meeting people there not along political lines in any way. If we as Democrats want to get control back of our community, I think we can't just say our community, our elected positions aren't accessible to us. What are we going to do about that? We need to say there are places that we could be very deep into our community, put ourselves there and show that we care so that we can build up to this piece where we are taking back political positions, because they're not going to be handed to us right now, and we have to do the hard work.
Yeah. Corinne, I haven't heard from you in a while.
Hey. No, I'm taking all this in. I understand there is a lot of frustration and there is a lot of hopelessness. I've been talking a lot I've been fortunate enough to be asked to speak at a couple of protests in our area, even in a place like Elkhart County that is a very heavily Republican place. I've been really heartened to see people showing up to events and to protests, and by the hundreds. That's pretty big for us up here. And the message that I share a lot is I put it in kind of a historical perspective, and I talk about the first women's convention that was held to organize to try to get white women, the right to vote in the United States, was in 1848. And only one woman who attended that conference actually lived to see the 19th Amendment ratified. W.E.B. Du Bois founded the NAACP in 1909. He died in 1963. He never saw the Civil Rights Act. He never saw the Voting Rights Act come to fruition. And every single person who began a movement did so being willing to plant a tree that they may never see bear fruit. And it didn't change a single thing they were going to do. I look at, Roe v. Wade being overturned obviously was a huge cultural shift for a lot of people. And that took 50 years. Many of the people who began to work against the Roe decision did not live to see it overturned. If I know that I'm not going to live to see these things actually come to fruition, does it change my tomorrow? It does not. And I am willing to play the long game. And I do think there is an aspect that Democrats can learn from the Republican Party in this sense, being willing to play the long game, being willing to invest in people and in issues and in communities, and not write anyone off as disposable because of where they live, because of their education level, because of their involvement in politics. And if we tell people you are valuable and you are important, and this will take decades, are you willing to do the work? Most people say, yes, I am. It's not going to change what we do tomorrow. And that's the framework where I wish there would be a lot more. I mean, yes, everybody understands 2026 is going to be a big election. We see this happen. You can look at historical trends with an unpopular president. You see the midterm swing one way or the other. That's not our metric. That's not going to be our metric. This has to be decades of work. And I wish there were more people that were willing to say that and willing to kind of look at historical trends. And the youth of the United States, honestly, it shows in so many of these conversations. We got to remember, we are a baby country. We're a baby country when you look at a lot of our counterparts around the world, and where lessons have been learned in those countries that the US is either just not there yet or unwilling to learn. And so, yeah, that honesty, I would like to see that, hey, y'all, we in this for the long run. Get ready. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to flip into 4-6 years. It's not going to flip on an election cycle.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Show that democracies don't last very much longer than where we're at right now. Isn't that what the data has shown in the past? That
well, we haven't done this kind of. I mean, we invented this.
Right.
Right.
But I'm
So,
just saying the democracies in the just sense of the word, not in the way we have
I want to
created
like
it,
the Roman
have a
Republic
tendency
lasted
to
about.
fail
Mhm.
after a certain period of time. And maybe what we're doing is going to break that pattern, and we are going to have a long-term sustainability with this type of democracy. But and I agree with everything Corinne says. I think that what we do now, we have to look at it as something that is going to have an impact in the future. I certainly understand, being at the age of 61, that I'm not going to see the changes that I want to see in my lifetime. This is for the future, and this is why I'm fighting for right now and speaking up, is because of our future. Um, and so I think when we get a group of people like this together that might have the same kind of thought processes but have different ways of going about it, I think that's what's important. And I think we all need to listen to each other, along with organizations and groups and what have you. We also have to keep in mind what's happening here isn't what's happening in Elkhart, isn't what's happening in Central Inlet. We live in different worlds, even though we live in the same state. Um,
Yeah.
and our battles are all for the same goals, but they are completely different, I think, in a lot of things. So I
Yeah.
love my community, and I'm going to fight for my community, and I'm going to still have coffee meetings with people and talk to people and go to neighboring communities to talk to people. But we have to find some way of being able to get our party in line where we are all on the same agenda, and we're not there right now. So but I appreciate everything that everybody has
Yeah.
said about what can be done, what you can do. So, and this is part of it, Scott. This is doing things like this is part of it. So
It really is.
I just
Thank
hope
you,
we have 1
Kurt.
million viewers on this. I hope it's,
Hey, well, we're
you know,
starting small. We're going to build our way up.
yeah,
We are at
we'll
an
get there.
hour and a half.
Okay.
So Kurt, you got the last word here today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank all of you out there watching and commenting on social media. Thanks to my panel today, Corinne Straight, Dr. Tim Peck, Kurt Mollett, and Michelle Higgs. I appreciate all of you. And that is it for week one. I will be back next week with an all new panel, and we will see you then. Until then, this has been Who's Left This Week. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.
Thanks, Scott.